Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. If you're headed to Utah to watch the Cowboys play next weekend, you won't want to miss this week's show. OKG is going on the road to Salt Lake City, where we visit the Red Butte Garden to learn more about their water conservation garden and ethnobotany. We then stop by the Conservation Garden Park to see how they're teaching people backyard landscape design practices to help improve water conservation efforts. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Oklahoma Gardening is also a proud partner with Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Shape Your Future provides resources for Oklahomans to make the healthy choice the easy choice.
I love sharing with you guys the cool things that plants can do. We're back here at the student farm. I want to share with you a tropical plant that you might find in some Oklahoma landscapes. It's important to know which plants we are dealing with so that we can continue to maintain them successfully for years to come. If you find yourself headed to Utah next week, you don't want to miss today's Oklahoma Gardening. Join us as we explore the unique horticulture sites that are right here in the cities by the mountains. We're going to visit the Red Butte Garden and also Conservation Garden Park. We'll look at the similarities and the differences as they garden in the same hardiness zones that we have in Oklahoma. It's an exciting and beautiful environment. Join us as we discover what there is to offer. We are here at Red Butte Garden and Arboretum, just inside of Salt Lake City. And joining me today is Guy Banner, who's a horticulturist here. Guy, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time.
My pleasure.
It is a beautiful garden right on the hillside here. Tell us a little bit about how this garden got started.
It began as a state arboretum where people could come to experience local native plants and trees. In 1985, the garden opened and started small, and it's grown since then. It's now 29 acres of manicured landscape and managed landscape, and then we have about the rest of 100 up in the natural area, which is a forest. Used to be forest land, but it's managed as a natural area up above us. So we're nestled right up against the foothills into the mountains here, and live in this urban wildland interface.
You're really bridging the gap here, and you
Yeah.
get to experience both of them while you visit here. Let's talk a little bit, because you kind of have the visitor center down low at base camp, and then you got to hike up. But let's talk about some of the different gardens that you have overall here.
All right, yeah. Some of our earliest gardens are the entrance gardens, the Four Seasons garden. We have an orangery, which is an event center for weddings and things like that. Then we have our terrace gardens, which we call the heart of the garden these days. But that includes an herb garden, a medicinal garden, and a fragrance garden. And we do weddings and things like that in the fragrance garden. Down lower, we have a rose garden. We have a water pavilion because we have Red Butte Creek running through the garden, and we have multiple ponds where we have the native Bonneville cutthroat trout stocked. But we see lots of birds and have some beautiful calm spaces with lots of water for people to hang out by. We've got the Wasatch Range behind us here, the Ochres across the valley, and you can see the Great Salt Lake and Antelope Island over there. It's one of the best places to view the valley and to see sunsets in the valley.
It's absolutely breathtaking. And we're here at the top of your area, the Water Conservation Garden.
That's right.
Can we work our way down and take a look at it?
Absolutely, love to.
Right.
larger sense of garden space. And it's something inspiring for people that maybe they can't do at home, but here it's something that they can experience on a bigger scale.
All of this that we're seeing right now is the water conservation garden?
Yep, that's right. So we're in the center of the water conservation garden. This area is called the Water Saver Terrace, and we have it broken up into hydro zones. So each of these plantings, all the plants are rated for a similar use of water, which is a really important concept in water conservation gardening.
Absolutely.
So hydrozoning, you match your plants by what water they need. That way you're not overwatering something or underwatering something. And
so the vegetation sort of changes then, right?
Absolutely. So we have this is one of our once a month areas.
Okay.
And then we have a zero water, nothing after establishment.
Okay.
Then we have once every other week, once a week, and then twice a week.
Okay.
At the lushest and greenest. And we try to work hard to make sure that this area looks as good as those areas later in the season when it gets really hot and things are dried out a lot.
I think that's a critical point always in botanical education, right?
Yeah.
Is that drought tolerant doesn't mean cactus and rocks.
That's
right?
right. Yeah, we try to show a lot of lushness, capture a lot of our native vegetation, but we borrow it from all around the world, the Mediterranean, some of our sister climates, like our sister city, I believe, is in Turkey. Okay. Just climatically, we're a zone. Six is our safe number, but 7 is what we're now rated as. So depending on where you go in the valley, 7 or a 6.
Which is so funny because Oklahoma is in that 6-7 range also, but drastically different because of just temperatures. And you guys get a lot more colder and consistently colder in the wintertime with snowfall.
Right. Yeah, we do tend to have consistent snowpack for chunks of time during the winter. It's not always throughout the entire winter, but so we probably share quite a few different plants. Our annual rainfall is about 17 inches, and I think you guys get quite a bit more than that.
A little more than that.
Yeah. But, you still have very hot short grass prairies there.
Right.
I understand. Your humidity is a lot higher than us.
Yeah.
But
it's a dry heat today.
Yeah, it's a dry heat.
But I will say I do recognize some of the plants, obviously the yarrow and the yuccas, and I've seen buffalo grass here, but some unique plants that I'm not familiar with.
Right.
Like this, what is this plume?
Apache plume or canyon plume,
Okay.
Fallujah paradoxa. This is a super drought hardy plant that stays evergreen on its leaves, and it gets these beautiful little white rose family flowers, kind of like a little simple apple blossom, followed by these are the seed heads that are fruiting.
Okay.
So it's just these plumes. So it's a great plant for just a continued season of interest. You get those blooms early on, and it sets these beautiful plumes up, and then they just stay.
And we got a nice mass of yellow behind that.
Right. This is a sulfur buckwheat, or Eriogonum. So there's a lot of the wild buckwheats in the United States, and the Western United States has a huge number of species. So this is a cultivar of one of our native species, but they're a great low water plant that has big blooms, and it's a great pollinator plant.
Okay.
That's something we try to do with this garden a lot as well, creating habitat for pollinators and various other beneficial creatures.
Absolutely. Well, I have to ask a little bit about the soil too. We're here on the rock, the mountainside,
Yes.
and I know you have Salt Lake down below.
Right.
What is your soil like here?
It's quite variable. So we have a pretty variable geology here, and so the parent material of these different rock formations breaks down and creates different types of soils. On average, our soil tends to be neutral to alkaline pH.
Okay.
As you get closer to the lake and down in the basin, it gets saltier, and so the pH goes up and the salt goes up.
Right.
Here on the foothills, where it used to be, it's been grassland and oak scrub for a long time, we have a little bit better soil, but there is a lot of clay, there's a lot of rock. This garden, we utilized the soil that was on site during construction and mixed in organic material and some drainage, and then we brought in a little extra soil as well. It's more of a silty texture, but it tends to be, there's a lot of clay in our soil.
Well, it's
red clay.
We know that, red clay.
Yeah.
It's definitely coming into its own, and it's a beautiful garden. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
My absolute pleasure.
We're now joined by Heidi Simper, who is the assistant curator here for Red Butte's garden and arboretum. And Heidi, we are in your fragrance garden, and is it ever fragrant? Tell me a little bit about this garden.
Yes, it is. I know viewers can't tell, but it is very fragrant in here. So this is part of this can be considered part of our ethnobotanical collections, as everything in here is fragrant, and people like to smell plants. And so, plants are used for perfume, fragrant plants are used in ceremony, all sorts of things. So that's why we're here, as well as it just provides a beautiful backdrop. And so I'll tell you a little bit about ethnobotany. Yeah. It's the study of the connections between people and plants. So how we use plants, both past and present, as well as different cultures, how different cultures use plants. Examples being medicinal, for clothing, even a garden is considered ethnobotanical because people are growing plants.
Yeah.
So plants have so many uses, and so it's really exciting to see them.
Now you guys have 3 particular gardens that sort of play up that ethnobotany. Tell me about those other gardens.
Yes, we do. So we have the medicinal garden, and then we have the herb garden, which are just over that way. And then, ethnobotanical plants are also throughout the whole garden. Okay. They actually make up probably about 75% of our plants are actually ethnobotanical, because most plants are useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the interpretation. I mean, the botanical gardens are always about educating the visitors.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of signs here telling us about how those plants were used, especially in the children's garden. Let's talk a little bit about those.
So what makes us a botanical garden instead of just a display garden is that we know all the Latin names of our plants, everyone has to have signs. And so that's part of my job, is creating all these signs.
And it's a tall task.
Yes, and we have a lot, and it's never ending.
Yes.
So I have job security. But so in the children's garden, we have a lot of ethnobotanical plants that are also native to Utah, kind of in one spot. And so we've created different colored signs that are red. So most of our signs are green. So these ones are like a red, and denoting that they are ethnobotanical and useful to our Native American tribes.
Okay, let's talk about some of your favorites. And your research is kind of focused on Native American ethnobotany, is that correct?
Yes. My own personal research actually was conducted in Tanzania, but here, as a local here, I have been focusing on Native Americans and learning about the uses of the plants. And so, some of my favorites, we're surrounded by yarrow right now. This is actually a cultivar of yarrow, but it can be used the same. Native tribes used it as a general cure-all, including the Ute tribe. The leaves and flowers are usually the ones that are used for medicine, and it can be made into a tea. In times of war, we've used the leaves as a poultice, and if you're ever in the wild, you can just pick a leaf of the yarrow, get it wet with your saliva, and then you just slap it on your wound, and it acts as like a blood coagulator.
Oh, really interesting.
Yeah.
I know you have a fun little potato also growing up in the children's garden. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's called the Four Corners potato, Solanum jamesii, and it has a really cool story. So our conservation department, with the help of the Natural History Museum, they're doing research in southern Utah, Escalante, Utah, and they found starch granules in a tool that is dated over 10,000 years ago. And this starch granule is from this potato.
Wow.
And so so we know that it was used 10,000 years ago, meaning it could very well be the first cultivated plant in the western U.S.
Oh my goodness. And
so,
I would imagine they don't look like our traditional potatoes we know of now,
No,
right?
they don't. They're very tiny. You have to collect a lot of them, and they're very bitter too.
Okay.
And there's special preparations they did to make that they do now still to make them taste better. And we're highlighting them in hopes to get Native Americans to grow them again, and they are. Like people are farming them now, and there's genetic research happening so that we can cultivate our potatoes that we get in the grocery stores and hybridize them with the Four Corners potato and introduce more drought resistance to our own potatoes.
Oh, excellent.
So there's possibilities for a more sustainable future.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. And I also know one of the plants that is involved in ethnobotany is the milkweed. Is that?
Yes.
Which we know very
Yes.
well in Oklahoma.
Yeah, absolutely. So Asclepias speciosa, which is showy milkweed, and there's actually one sticking up right there.
Oh, yeah, right there.
And so it's used for fiber. You can pull fiber off of its stem, as well as it produces a milky latex. If you've ever touched one, you've probably gotten sticky with it. And Native Americans make that into like a chewing gum.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, as well as you can put it on warts to get rid of warts as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
and also, what about a ryegrass? Tell us a little bit about this ryegrass.
Oh,
rice grass.
Yes,
excuse me.
so Indian rice grass, Achnatharum hymeneoides. It's a staple grain for many of the tribes here in Utah, and they used it to make porridge. They put the seeds in their mush. It was a staple. They put it in everything, made cakes of it, preserved it so they could eat it in the winter. It is one of their most prized plants, I believe.
That's cool. So it's really neat what y'all are doing here and kind of bringing those stories back to life again, and remembering the heritage and the culture that these plants offer.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up because, ethnobotanists, that's kind of their goal. They want to preserve the knowledge of indigenous people who have been accruing this knowledge for thousands of years. And, sadly, it's on the decline. And so, remembering these ways they use them, and they still use them today. It's really important in preserving their culture, and which also leads to diversity of our earth, and which is very important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate you joining us.
no problem. Thank you.
We are here in West Jordan, just south of Salt Lake City at the Conservation Garden Park. And joining me is Courtney Brown. And Courtney, I think it's really a demonstration garden, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the history here?
Yeah, the Conservation Garden Park is what it's called. It was started in about the year 2000 when the first phase was built, and it's been built in phases ever since then, mostly through donated funds. Although it's owned by the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, for the purpose of water conservation, to help people learn about water-wise landscapes and how to make changes in their own yards.
And you've done that in a lot of different ways. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that visitors might see throughout the gardens.
Well, there's dozens of exhibits designed to help people understand landscaping principles and ways to make changes, irrigation, design principles, maintenance principles, and just plants. A lot of people need ideas for what kind of plants will grow in their yards.
True.
And something that will inspire people and give people ideas and knowledge about and confidence in how to make changes in their yards.
And I think you've done a fantastic job. There's a lot of fun interpretation and signage for people to explore. This particular area we're standing in, though, kind of spoke to me, and I think Oklahoma residents can really relate to some of this stuff. It's your Localscape exhibit. Can you tell me a little bit about this space?
So Localscapes is a design principle for how to do a sustainable landscape. It's a simplified design principle that a homeowner can easily understand and not feel overwhelmed by what it takes to remove lawn and replace it with something that's going to use less water and make irrigation changes. So where we're standing is a Localscapes exhibit, and it's a 1/4 acre lot fenced in, which is a typical lot size for this area. And it incorporates 5 design principles. What this concept does is it takes what people are used to and just flips it right around.
Okay.
So you've got most of northern Utah historically is lawn dominant landscapes. It's not uncommon to find lawn going from someone's foundation all the way to the fence line. And then they'll come in and if they alter that, they'll put in a planter, a kidney bean shaped planter in their yard or something around the house. Localscapes takes that order or that process and changes it completely around. And we start designing with the lawn and a central open shape. Doesn't have to be lawn, but that's the first principle, is a central open shape, something that's ground level, and it can be functional as a lawn or just a gravel space where people can gather or something like that. The second principle is gathering areas. So places where people can gather and talk, like this area next to us here.
Area, yeah.
And those are designed, strategically as needed.
Right.
Then there's activity zones. So activity zones, as the name implies, anything where some activity happens, a vegetable garden, a playground like the one behind me, or a trampoline, or anything like that.
Right.
Isn't it? Even something like a shed, necessary parts of the landscape.
But maybe something that you don't want to have a lot of maintenance around, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to kill your grass
Right.
if you've got a trampoline on it. So how do you design with that?
The advantage to us as in water conservation is that those areas don't require any water. It's part of the landscape. It's providing function and value to the landscape, but no water use.
Okay.
It's hardscape.
Absolutely.
And then we take all those areas and we connect them together with paths. And those can be secondary paths made out of gravel or something like that. So that connects them, provides more function to the landscape. And then the last thing becomes the planter areas. And all the other space is filled in with plants.
Okay.
And of course, there's a lot of design elements associated with that and how to do that. A lot of options as well.
And when you say planter space, you might mean whether it's an in-ground bed near a house or by the front entrance or containers as well?
Yeah, all of that.
Okay.
And the advantage to doing that last is the shapes of those planter beds are going to be irregular. And so it's easy to fill that in with plants and water it efficiently with drip irrigation rather than spray irrigation, which, doesn't bend around curves very easy. So,
well, I love what you guys have here, and it's a true visual for people to walk in and kind of experience it like you're in somebody's backyard here. Again, this is the Conservation Garden Park, and tell us a little bit. It's free to the public if anybody's in town, they want to come visit.
Yeah, it's free to the public. It's open weekdays during the day primarily, and just a lot of interesting things to look at. A lot of different plants for ideas, exhibits of how to do things, and maybe things that you hadn't considered previously. You can get some idea of what it would take to redesign a landscape and install it.
Absolutely. Well, while some of our plants are same and some are different than what you have here in Utah, I know a lot of those same design principles will be applicable to Oklahomans. So thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you.
If you're planning on visiting Utah next week, I hope you take time to also visit these beautiful horticulture sites. Go Pokes! There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead.
As we begin to wrap up the gardening season, join us next week for another great episode of Oklahoma Gardening.
The zone that we have in Oklahoma.
Okay, here we go.
I'm not driving right now.
To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriters, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, and Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Additional support is also provided by Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticulture Society, the Tulsa Garden Club, and the Tulsa Garden Center.